the app that we're going to be running with, or the app we're trying to promote here, is to help you deliver and develop data-driven decisions during the game. And that's the whole purpose of the app. You can see there's a white one and a black one. There are two icons. I'm going to come back to that later on in the presentation, but just keep an eye out for it. I think, again, the logic behind it's really good, but one is essential and one is an optional one. So, like, I suppose the problem at the minute is most teams collect data during the game, but they don't know what to do with it, or we very often collect too much data, complicate it. Most teams look at data and games in isolations rather than as a collective. The data we collect is asking at times more questions that's actually giving us answers. And one of the big issues we have is that whenever we collect data, it is without a point. I have some examples of that, and it's not to say it's pointless data. Just at that time during a game, you can be sometimes collecting it. And I'll tell you just quite quickly why this all came about. I'm not a data analyst. I don't claim to be a data analyst. I work in organization development. I work at hard teams, work in teams function and trying to get high performing teams and doing a lot of learning with teams and development individuals as well. And one of my friends took over a club in Belfast and came to me with this amount of data. It was on two A4 pages, but it was about 6 games. And it was just all kickouts, retention, wage, shots, location, or no locations on it, but just all these raw figures. And I sort of started questioning on it, saying, well, what does that tell you? And it was about a shot conversion. He says, well, look, our shot in that first match is 50%. So that's obviously not good enough. And our shot in that match is 90%. So that is really good enough. And I said, well, did you win or lose? He says, don't know. I says, how many shots did you hit? Well, I'm not too sure. Where did you hit them from? And that's what I mean by sometimes data we collect can often ask more questions, especially if we're trying to use it during the games. Most teams will have someone there collecting data during a game on a bit of paper or whatever it might be. And the aim of this app is to hopefully bridge the gap that brings with it. So the model that I always go back to whenever it comes to understanding data is around about this outcomes-based accountability. And it comes in 3 parts, okay? So we'll talk about the part 1 and part 2 at the minute. Part 1 is essentially how much did we do? And that is your raw figures. That is, we had 18 kickouts, we had 35 shots, we had 15 fouls. They're just your whole numbers that we can see at a very, very quick glance. That's what we call population. In the model, then we go into how well did we do. So out of your 35 shots, you had 50% conversion. And by your 18 kickouts, you had 100% retention. And that's where you start getting into more data principles of it and data, so the underlying principles of data intelligence. I suppose these are some of the examples to hopefully not be too unfamiliar to you. You can see the left-hand side here. This is one, I think it's a GAA stats app you call it. It's a free app that you can get. It looks at things like your goals, your points, your wage, your off the post, your saves, and then it goes in. So that's all our population stuff. And then we also look at things like your conversion rate. You've had 40 shots, 75% of those turned into scores. Hopefully that'll not be too dissimilar to you. The one on the bottom left there is your VO camera. A lot of teams using VO at the minute or another video format, and they're watching games back after. Of course, watching a game back after, you can't really say, this is a horrible, change it now. It's okay for going forward, but at that time, during a game, there's little to no meaning behind it. So it's difficult to actually have data-driven decisions during game to bring about a winning change in that. Top right hand side, this is one there that's I think it's a Square D podcast you call it's on YouTube. Very in-depth, analytical, very hot heavy in terms of the information provided. You can never get that type of information in real time. It's definitely post game. It is brilliant. If you're interested in data, I would often listen to it. I think it's really insightful, but it is very heavy in terms of the amount of information you need to put in, and it would take you a couple of hours to do it after a game. Middle image down the bottom, this is one where it's counting the amount of touches a player has in relation to your time on the ball and time off the ball. So whenever your opponents have the ball, and also whenever you have the ball, it's broken down into a player individual stuff sort, and it's hopefully helped me measure the amount of touches and the amount of involvement the game has. But you would know that if your cornerback didn't touch the ball, but likewise their corner forward didn't touch the ball, you would say your cornerbacks had a good game. Things like that can often be off on. You probably wouldn't use this type of information during a game. But what this guy has done is actually tried to come up with some sort of formula, all well intended. I was speaking to him last week, and it's just something I would use. Was his explanation for it. And what he's done there is took the amount of tackles divided by the amount of time that the team, your opponents have the ball, and worked out a work rate for that. So again, there's lots and lots going on. Some of it is really useful at the time. A lot of it won't actually help you during the game. So this here is what we have in terms of the population stuff and also the performance stuff. We have things like you've had 13 kickouts, you've had 12 kickouts won, you've had 18 shots, and you've scored 212 from it. What that looks like in terms of the performance is that your kickouts are 93%, which are really, really good, and your shots scored are 77%. Again, brilliant for it. What I want to do now is to just invite anybody who wants to come on. And even no, what I'll do, I'll put into the chat for it. I'm going to leave it 1 minute and give you a chance to go in. So in the chat now, using this information on the left-hand side, and a psychologically safe place, there's no wrong answer here. It's just so I'm going to give you an example of what people are saying next anyway. But using this data, what could you do or what can you do at halftime? Say, how could you use that data to bring about improvements within your team? I'm going to put on the stopwatch now and give you exactly 1 minute. So if you want to just use your chat function there, and we will see what the chat's saying. So it's just everything on the left-hand side there. Hit kickouts 13, kickouts 1, you've won 12 of them. The shots hit, you've won 18 of them. From those shots, you've scored 212. Again, your shot to score ratio is brilliant, 77%. And your kick-out retention is really good at 93%. So how would you use that to bring about performance improvement in the second half? So Royd says they need to keep doing the same thing in the second half. Chris has said, I think it depends on what you're focused on. Yeah. Anybody else just chat, put into the group there or into the chat there what you think. I mean, can you use this data? Would this data be of any meaning to you during a game? And it's okay to say, no, Kevin, take yourself off. It's completely useless.
Yeah, I think it's definitely useful. There's like no two ways about it, as Garrod said on that. They keep doing what they're doing in the second half, definitely. But I think it is, dependent on, what the things that like those things obviously are important. Like shots scored, kickouts won is important. But I suppose maybe then what you're doing from what the opposition are doing on theirs then as well, obviously would be important.
Could sorry, let me see. Analyze word numbers and metric post pre-game targets if they're doing the job. Yeah. So I mean, it is useful, but to go back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, it probably asks more questions than it does give answers. We're probably jumping to assumptions and conclusions based upon this, and this would be anything. This is probably at a very high level, and it's probably as a minimum what you guys would be collecting during the game or at halftime. You'd make an assumption there that with this many kickouts won, 13 or 12 out of 13, 83%, that's where most of your scores are coming from, or most of your shots are coming from. Would it be fair to say that's probably an assumption we would make? Yeah. Look, I think it is true. I'm going to skip on now because you probably tell it's a loaded question I've asked there. The kickouts, sometimes we get on that one where people would say, well, if it's opponent, you press higher up on their kickouts, you press them on their 65 or slow down, or on their 45. You'd slow them down coming out, so you would probably foul them if they won their own kick out. You would give up their kick and drop back. You would give a free from their own kick out, but ultimately, a lot of people are saying like it doesn't just tell us enough to make a decision on it, and that's all for our comments. Looking at it from your own point of view, you're probably saying, "Brilliant, keep it going, lads." From an opponent's point of view, you're probably saying, Jesus, they are winning too much of their kickouts. Let's drop back. Let's press them higher or let's foul them so we can slow them down coming out. I suppose what we're talking about the stage one and stage two here of the model, and what it definitely does is lacks specificity in terms of the data. It's difficult to translate the data into actionable insights, and the data doesn't tell the story. It's not connected. It's incomplete just at that time. So the last part of the model that we're going to go into is around about the who's better off because of this data that we have, because of this information. So what? What is it doing to actually improve our game? What is it? What is this data? Why are we collecting this data? And how is it making our game better? How is it bringing about winning connections? And ultimately, that's where a lot of our stuff at the minute falls down, particularly if unless you're using some of the high performance stuff out there. But if you're using just your basic high level information, it can be very hard to say actually who's better off because of what information you're collecting, which is what the app tries to overcome. That's a hurdle that the app tries to overcome, particularly for clubs that don't have a data analyst involved in them. So the model that the app's been built to overcome that weakness. For me, that it keeps the data easy to collect. It's simple to understand. It's user friendly interface. All you need is a mobile phone. A kid can input the data for it. It works across both iPhone and Android. So if you had an Android one day and you use an iPhone the next day, your other report to stay in the same place. Or if you were as go into later on, the white app talks to the backup. So if you have the white app where it's putting all the information in, it's on an iPhone, but down on the line somewhere, someone's using a Galaxy phone or a Samsung phone, they could still pick it up. And it's most effective for in games, and it helps to tell a more complete story at that time. The difference, I suppose, I have to get our head around about this app tracks phases of play from the initial action that you gain possession of the ball until you lose the ball. That's where the phase we talk about on it. It's live during the game. It presents numbers, which we've discussed earlier on, that you're already really good at doing, but it also presents visuals as well. So you can put 1, 2, and 3 together to come up with a more complete picture. It's easy to use filters. So if you want to drill down to kickouts, you would select kickouts. If you want to look even further to short kickouts, you could do that as well. And it's easy to share with players because it's on a mobile phone. You simply record your screen. You can do your voiceovers over the top of it, and then just send it through WhatsApp as well. And they're fixed questions in terms of what we're asking. So look, this one here was actually a live example. It wasn't at halftime, but it was a live example of a down and burn in the Down County final this year. Okay, so Kilcoo and Burn, it was the Down County final. That was Kilcoo's outputs during that game. Cairo Kane had tweeted, you here in pink, said about Kilcoo that their kickouts are the best in club football anywhere in Ireland. Kane always seems to find his man and gives him such a platform. And that to me is what I was loading that question with earlier on. Even watching the game live, you're probably seeing a lot of their scores are coming because they're winning such a high percentage of the kickovers or the kickouts. 93% of the kickouts are won. So you would make that assumption that they are actually doing really well in their kickout and that's leading to their scores. But actually, what I'm going to go into now is a live example of what that is. The app that we had done, this was actually what it was broke down to. So overall, they had total shots was 20, 14 from turnovers, 6 of them from short kickouts, 6 of them from kickouts, 2 of them from short kickouts, and 4 of them from long kickouts. So you can see there that actually out of 78% of their, 78% of their scores actually came from turnovers, which is madness whenever you think about it. They won 93% of their own kickouts. Their own kickout retention had very little burn on the game. They actually only scored 1-2 from it. 93% retention on it, and they only had 1-2 coming from it. I'm going to jump onto my phone now, and I want to show you that's one thing the app can do. But if you give me 1 minute, I'm going to. Okay, so into the epicenter, which is a white app at the minute. You can see in here that we have a game that's at halftime. That was just something that we were running with. If you go across here to down the bottom right hand side, you'll see your wee settings icon. See the notifications, change passwords, all that jazz into it, and then you see my teams. Within my teams, here's how you actually go about setting up your teams. You simply click on add new team. Is it an opponent team or is it your own team? With either of those, it's unlimited. So with this app, you could have your senior football team, your senior hurling team, your junior football team, your camogie team, your ladies football team, across minor as well, all using the same app. It's not limited to the many home teams if you have. If you were maybe looking at their school team as well, that wouldn't matter. You would simply have it all in there too. And your opponent team, again, it's unlimited. There's no amount to this. You don't get the 50 within a season. Like you could cover hundreds of these if you wanted to. So all you simply do is click on your team, you select your sport, you input your name, your county, and then your level. If you want to upload an image of the club, that's great. Once you have your teams built, you can simply go in down the bottom where it says insert squad, click on insert squad, and that's where you start to add your players. This can also be broken down into individual players, which I'll talk about later on. But if you're only starting out on it, we start just with all players. We take what we're trying to just use the app to get walking before we start running. But you could drill down into that and have in like your keeper, their pen profile, whatever that might be. So that's how you just get the app started. Whenever it comes to actually having starting a game, so if I wanted to, I go into start new game. You select your team, you select your opponents, and then you select your venue, whether you're home or away, and then you hit start. Now, if you wanted to do this all whenever the fixtures are only out, you could have those all planted in and ready to go, and simply hit no if you don't want them to start yet. Go back into your home screen, and it comes up as a pending game there, as you can see. So let's say match is about to throw in. You select your game and you hit yes, I want to start that now. So you can see here the first thing we're going to be asked to do. These are all pre-populated questions, and this is the start of a phase. The questions are all closed questions. There's more to go into it that we're currently testing at the minute, but I just want to take you through an example of it. So let's say the ball is thrown in and your team win their kick out. So the first thing, or win the ball, first thing you're asked to do is to select your team. You add that and you add what the initial action of it is. So they've worked the ball at the pitch and they hit a shot. You're asked what player it is, and then also plot the location. So you imagine you're on the sideline here. If you're up the top tier of the home stand, doesn't matter. You're watching the game left or right. For the purpose of this, my team is playing left or right on the screen, and the shot's going to come in here up in the sort of top left corner. So I took my action, selected my player, I took the location, and what I want to do now is put in the outcome. I'm going to put that in, that was a point. So the next phase of that is obviously that the opponents get their kick out. I'm going to say that they've went for a long kick out. Again, this is the start of a new phase. They've won that long kick out by player, let's say 9. He's run it out there on the right-hand side. They've maybe had 15 hand passes in between 2 kick passes. It doesn't matter. At the minute, this is the only 2 things that will bring that phase of play to a close. They hit a shot or they've been turned over. Now, if they've they've hit a shot, where that shot was from, again, let's go for the center of the D there. It was from player, say 9, and it was a point. Your team now have possession of the ball, kick out. Let's say you've went short in your kick out and you've actually lost it. What player was it lost it and where was it lost? That's that phase no longer in play. You can go into it, select the other teams, and let's say they've hit a shot by player 15, they're on the left-hand side, and that was a wide. And you would continue to do that throughout the game, just watching the game. During a football game, I get in probably around about 120 pieces of data. During a hurling game, it's probably up around about the 150 mark. So I'm just going to hit exit on this now. It'll ask me, do I want to break or do I want to stop? If it's half time, I've just hit break. But if the game's over, I'm going to hit stop. So that's how you input the information into the app in real time. Again, it only takes a mobile phone. At this point, you're probably wondering, well, how do you see that information? If I go into my report list, it'll see up here, the first one here, 2nd November. That's the one I want to look at. And the first thing we're presented with is a score by time. So you can see it's a point of peach on that. The score by time is simply a means to track patterns in terms of, do you guys start late? Do you take 10 minutes to get a score? Do you finish halves really, really well? And more importantly, what about your opponents to it? And I'm going to show that in the example shortly. So before we go into what I'm going to do is, if I remind you earlier on around about the one we're looking at about Burn and Kilcoo, where they had 93% of their kickouts won. The black app is the receiver app. Now, as like I say, you don't need to use this, but what this is really good for is that someone who is not beside the person inputting the data, let's say they could be down on the sideline watching it. The person inputting it could be watching it on BBC in the house. They could be anywhere in the world watching a different game or watching the game, and this person on the sideline could be picking this information up in real time and being able to apply it to coaches or let the coaches know what's going on. So you can see how easy the last one was to put in. Again, if you had someone who was maybe a long-term injured player, they could be putting this data in instead of sitting on the line for you, and you could have your stats person actually there watching it and trying to understand what is going on. If we go into Kilcoo and Burn here, just an example, you can see just down the left-hand side here, Burn is in the red and Kilcoo's in the green. Kilcoo have taken just around about 10 minutes to get their first score. And then up around about the 35-minute mark there, you can see again, they have a lull where they take time to score in the first 10 minutes of the second half. That is a pattern that Kilcoo have done all year round. I've watched them probably about 7 or 8, 9 times this year in the league and championship, and it is a pattern. They don't often score in the first 10 minutes of each half. Now, if you knew that, if you were able to track that, you would say that is a pattern. If you were intuitive enough, you might be able to try and exploit that. But if we go into, we want to look at, we talked about the how much and the how well. If I want to see visuals on it, this is how easy it is to look at. So what we have here is the players are all listed by names, and you can see the small triangles represent short kickouts. Don't worry about it at the minute. This is all the actions throughout the game. Small triangles represent short kickouts. If it's green, it's been won, and if it's red, it's been lost. The squares represent long kickouts. Green has been won, and red has been lost. A white flag represents a point. The red sort of rhombus there with the white flag in the middle of it, that represents a wide, and a green flag is also a goal. The last one we're looking at is turnover. Now, that's me just explaining to you the key. That's obviously a lot of data, a lot of information that you will find it very hard to pick anything with. But up on the left-hand side here, you see a filter. And the filter is simply what we're saying earlier on. This then breaks it down for you. So if I want to look at the first half, all the actions in the first half, I would select all. And by which team, we'll go with ourselves. In this case, it was Kilcoo. So I believe Kilcoo, in this example, are playing right to left. You can see the keeper for long and short kickouts in this half preferred to go to his right-hand side. You can see that the shots are coming preferably from centre to right-hand side, nothing really at the left there. And it's worth keeping an eye on just for that. If I then say, well, what does that mean to me? I want to actually look at what their outcome of their kickouts have been. You can see here they've had 5 kickouts in the first half. They have won 4 of them, but there's only resulted in 1.4. And again, if I want to drill that down even further, I can go, let's say they're long kickouts. Their point actually came from a long kickout. So if you were Burn and you knew that, you could probably afford to give their kick up out, and knowing that you're probably doing well, that they're not being able to score from there. If you want to be able to see where their other shots came from, so these are from turnovers. But again, you can see patterns out there. Even the one that was wide is out the right-hand side. Kilcoo prefer to shoot out the right-hand side. If you want to look at those again in the second half, you simply go in, apply your filters, and it turns around on its head. So you can see again that the actions are that they prefer to definitely shoot from the right-hand side. Let's see if we want to your shots and play. So apart from that one out the left, they've hit 4 scores in the second half, and the 3 of them have come centre to right. One was a penalty. If we look at their kickouts as well applied to that, you can see that in here, again, it's been all the right-hand side, even their wide. At the left-hand side, it should have been an easy enough score, was their fort. You could also look at your opponents or Burn in this half. We could drop it in half time. And again, just going through patterns of play, you can say again they prefer to move out the right hand side for that. So I'm going to come back in now. Take that off. So I'm going to go back in and share my screen now for it. We've looked at the patterns of it. You're able to see visually. If you're going at half time, you're able to say to team players like they're coming down the right hand side. Let's try and force them. Allow them to shoot even out the left hand side because there's clearly a weakness there for it. This is your high level view you're getting. You're looking at the total amount and you're looking at the total scores from it. You could probably say, look, they're not doing an awful lot from their own kickouts, but they're definitely winning more of our kickouts or turning us over a lot more for it. So we have to be better placed for that. You can also drill down even further to it at the same time. So if you had somebody there, you had two people, maybe one person putting it as a say and one person dedicated to actually look at that, you can look at the amount of total kickouts. This is our population data. We're talking about the stage one earlier on. This is the performance of it. What's working out really well for them. You can see that their long kickouts are working out brilliant for them, 85%. Their short kickouts, the 100% of them, but 66% of them have been turned over. So you could say that don't worry, if they're winning the short kick out, don't worry about it. There's stuff that you could probably lean to as a manager, as a coach at halftime and be able to be a bit more informed about. The beauty of it is that you now have your static whole numbers, but you also are able to, in real time, look at those patterns that are coming about as well. As I say, you can drill down in individual players, but that's only as you get, I would say that's only as you get more advanced into the app as well and more comfortable using the app. But you can certainly see here whereby the guy looking at the stats is coming down and he's saying, look, a lot of their scores are coming from turnovers. What location they're coming from? Do we give up their short? Or, for example, Derry and Armagh this year in the Ulster final, Derry scored 1-5 from short kickouts. They hit 9 short kickouts and scored 1-5 for it. That's something in real time, high level scoring from short kickouts. You take the risk and you press high up on them. This here was just during that game. Actually, I was doing a bit of work for Down TV. This was the person who was quoting onto it. He says, I thought the game was all about the restarts, same as Cara O'Kane here. But it was amazing to watch it with the data you provided. I'd never seen that in real time. So he's watching the game. He said it's all about the kickouts for it, but actually it was all about the turnovers. And there are things that you actually miss just as a player, as a coach or a manager. Again, just one of the things I mentioned earlier on about the patterns. So why do we do this? I suppose it allows for data-driven decisions to be made. It identifies patterns in play. We coach patterns as managers and coaches, trainers and players. We go over patterns and patterns and patterns. The quicker we can identify patterns, the quicker we can put in measures to prevent them. We can also make realistic changes during the game. So even in the second half, instead of having to say, look, it's moving to we'll worry about the second half, just let it carry out. If there is a pattern developing in the second half, you could quickly be saying, or get your stats man and say, look, they're now shooting from their left-hand side or they're getting more from their short kick out. So we're going to have to do something else and get that message out to your players. So the game's constantly changing. Even if it's every 10 minutes, like, is there anything different there? No, everything's good. Play away. Or is there, every 15 minutes, you might be getting a wee bit of feed into your ears. You'll say, yeah, we maybe want to look at this, particularly as games are getting closer. It draws on your team's strengths and also your opponent's weaknesses too. You can see there, Kilcoo, if you watch them, I think it's Sunday, see how many shots it takes from the left-hand side. It's not a huge amount. We all are guilty, especially as players and coaches and managers, become emotionally charged during games. Whenever we're standing on the white line and things like that, we can often forget what's going on. You're trying to tell players where to go, or trying to encourage them as best you can. But this here is non-judgmental. There's no emotion involved in it. It just gives that wee bit of clarity to it. And it's about helping bring about successful outcomes for you. It also helps planning better for games. So as it says earlier on to you, is that some of the guys are watching games back and they're tracking data then. That can take a couple of hours. If you're doing it where you're taking down kickouts and stats, and it might take 2 hours to watch one game. I provide reports to clubs in 40 minutes. With that app, if it's collected in real time, you're already aware of what you're going to watch before the game actually. You're watching it back for improvements on it. And then if you're coming into championship, you have to prepare for teams. You can collect a lot of information on opponents and spot their patterns. So again, you can do this in real time for it. Most of all, it's that old Jimmy McGuinness one. where he says that the reason why Dublin or Donegal didn't beat Dublin in 2011 is because he told the players what to do. He didn't show them. So it allows players to actually see what's going on as well as the data behind it. Some players, most players, not be interested in data, but what they will do is say, look, it's very obvious that everything's going to the right hand side. I know what you mean. I will stay out there, and they'll not judge you as much, or they'll not question you as much whenever it comes into what you're asking them to do. This is it in real time. Okay, this is Ryan O'Neill Ulster final. Sometimes we get, is it possible to use this while the game's actually going on? You'll see that I've had to speed it up in real time. So Ryan's had a point. I put down there that it was a point. Derry are about to hit the short kick out, and Lynch goes to the right hand side. And again, I was doing this watching the game on BBC. If Geezer had a phone me, he could have watched the game or he could have had these stats feed to him in real time. So they've won the short kick out at the right hand side there. Derry have possession of the ball. Whatever goes on in here, for the purposes of live information and live data, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about the amount of passes a player has. I know now this phase of play is coming to an end. It's a bit of a skyward shot up, but ultimately Rogers comes in, gets a fist to it. The location, I then put in the shot from the last location, and the outcome was a goal. As I say, I can collect probably around about 120 in a football and say 150 in the hurling. So the two ups, the weight up is the epicenter. That's where you build your teams. That's your house. Your limited amount of teams that you have. That's where everything goes on. You can also view reports in that too. If you have somebody there who's maybe going to give you a hand, or someone who's going to be, and you don't need data experience to be putting this information in. All you need is a set of eyes and a bit of common sense that you're able to follow the questions that are being asked of it. And then the black one, that's a receiver up. So if you did have someone there who knew a wee bit about data and they're a bit more comfortable with it, and they're maybe on your coaching team, your selection team, they could be down the front of it, getting this information on their phone. It only requires a phone to do it. And they can go in at any time and say, look, here's patterns that we're going through. It can inform halftime, it can inform the start of a game, or it can inform any time through the game. Say the app is multi-users, so it's not limited to one team per club. It is as many teams within that club as you want to actually have access to this app. It includes both apps. There's a 1 year subscription with it. If you sign up to it now, you get the first your subscription really doesn't start to the 1st of January, but you have access to the app straight away. So you're able to go in there between now and ultimately the 1st of January and play about with it, watch games from last year and get used to it. We're retailing the app at £300, and that's with a discount code. So it's usually £415, but up until the 20th of November, we're retailing it at £300 if you use the GAA 115 code for it. There'll also be one-to-one support throughout it, or once you get going live. So you can see here just a couple more examples I can go into. If you were planning again for this was the Kilcoo in the final. You could see here that in the first half, down the bottom left, and the second half up the top right, apart from one score, they're almost dead areas. If you look at that, they're almost completely dead areas that they're not going for. So as a manager, you might say, look, let's try and encourage them to shoot from the left-hand side because they're clearly not comfortable with it. This was Lavi, so going into the Derry example earlier on, this was Lavi against Balahi in the Derry Championship. I was up watching it, and first half, Lavi playing right to left here. All their kickouts go to the left-hand side. All their shots are sent to the right-hand side. I think that, and I've seen Balahi, and they do use performance sport for it. So I was saying, that's obviously a clear pattern that's going on there. That all their kickouts are going on the left hand side. They were setting up in like a spinals position, but all their runs made were out to the left. Halftime, I was saying you have to catch on to that. Second half, they came out, and again, the patterns were almost the exact same. Where most of the kicks, bar two, which one was right in front of the D, bar two of them, they continued to go out to the left hand side. And again, shots centered to right hand side. This left area was a completely dead zone.